the best black and white images have a pretty large amount of Today's video is sponsored by me, the Ultimate Gel Photography and Photoshop course. It includes over 24 hours of tutorials and instruction and growing, over 25 gel editing videos, bonus cyberpunk and boudoir editing walkthroughs, lighting setup, full photo shoots, photography 101, Photoshop 101, frequency separation and dodge and burn, tons of bonus content and downloads, and you continue to receive all new content added to the course because I add to it every year, and it includes lifetime access. Go to learngels.com to learn more. Hey everyone, and welcome. Thank you for watching in advance. I hope you're having a great day. I wanted to take some time and kind of look at a photo that I recently added on Facebook, how it started and where it went, and why I elected to go black and white with it. So this is the photo in question. This is the final photo. So there's a few things going on here. So this is the original photo here, originally in color. Really didn't do a lot of adjustments in Lightroom except for the exposure. So this is how it was exposed. And then this is the adjustment that I made in Lightroom. I then opened it up in Photoshop, and this is the layers that I came up with in Photoshop. Basically, there was an issue with the crop, so in Photoshop, now this is prior to generative fill. What I did back then, what I would do now is you just go here, take your rectangular marquee tool, and then do a gen fill, and it would fill in the rest. But what I did back then is just stretched it out. I just created a layer and then stretched it over to give myself more space so I could properly crop the photo back in Lightroom. I cleaned up her face, as you can see. Let's zoom in. So basically some frequency separation. This is about 4 years ago, so I probably did a 2-layer frequency separation technique instead of apply image. I talk about frequency separation in some other videos. But anyway, I cleaned it up, and cleaned up her skin. Let's take a look at the arms rather and the body. It looks like it did the same with the arms and body, just some light retouching, and then with the legs down here. Let's zoom in so you can see. Okay, and then let's zoom out. So I just sharpened. This is just a high pass filter. I just sharpened the image a little bit, and then a small curves layer, I added a little bit of a shine in her cheekbone right here, and that's it. And then I saved that, and then I went back to Lightroom, came in here, and this is the final result. I cropped it, as you can see here. I cropped it here, and that's the final result. Now, I've been thinking about black and white images recently and trying to figure out why they work and when they work. Again, I'm pretty much self-taught. I am a big fan of empiricism and kind of learning by doing. And what I have found over the years is that the best black and white images have a pretty large amount of contrast. That seems to be kind of the number one attribute that they all share, is that really compelling black and white images anyway have a high amount of contrast. So in this particular photo, we obviously have on the right side of her face and her body exposure, very bright white, and then on the left side of her face, she is kind of mired in shadow, right? We got some stooped in shadow, and obviously her shadows falling on the paper over on this side, and on this side we don't have any shadow at all. And so that is really it when it comes to black and white images. What makes a black and white image compelling? The first rule, I think, is probably contrast. And if you do a search for black and white imagery on Google, you'll see a number of really beautiful black and white images, and they all share that same attribute. Whether it's a portrait, and here's another portrait of a man up against a brick wall. We have white and dark on one side. Now, it doesn't have to be white and dark on one side necessarily. It just, there has to be contrast. So there's another portrait, black and white, very contrasty. Same here. Okay, so what does it look like when a photo isn't contrasty? That's kind of, that might be your next question. It would be for me. So here's an example of a photo that is not contrasty, and in fact, I edited it to be that way on purpose. Okay, so looking at this photo, I was going for a certain effect. This was a very feminine feel and mood, and I wanted to do the opposite of contrast. I wanted to make it almost like a painting. So there's a few things I did to accomplish that. I raised the exposure, I reduced the highlights. What that does is it evens out the photo, the exposure of the photo, the highlights of the photo. It brings the highlights down, and that further reduces contrast. I left the shadows alone, but I boosted the whites a little bit. Now that actually increases contrast, boosting the whites, and I lowered the blacks a little bit, and that further increased the contrast. But the big one, the one that kind of rules them all with this photo, is this little guy down here. This is my curve adjustments, the tone curve palette in Lightroom. And you can do this in Photoshop too. But that matte feeling, the matte look, I love it. I love contrasty black and whites, but I also love this look a lot, and I use this a lot. And all you do is, and you can do it a few different ways, but what I did is I created an anchor point here in the center on the midtones, and then you do what's called, you lift the blacks. So what it does is it produces this kind of matte look and feel. Okay, and so it looks almost like a painting. And I'll tell you what, let's go back, let's set this back to what it looked like in the beginning. And this is what it looked like out of camera with the exposure boosted a little bit here. Now, if we go back to what I had, the effect I had, we can clearly see the difference. Okay, so the thing is, let's see what happens when I now make this a black and white. And there it is in black and white. Now, this is very dull. This looks, in black and white, this looks very dull. There's nothing striking about it. She's almost lost in the background. And so this is not ideal for me. And so this is why, this I hope illustrates why, black and white images are best if they are very contrasty. And that's why they work, black and white images work best if they're contrasty. So let's remove this black and white, and we are left. Now, I'm not done with this yet. I may actually convert this back to being contrasting. Who knows? I may make it black and white. I have to go in and do some retouching on her face. But maybe I'll produce two versions of this to show what the difference is. But yeah, let's take a look at some of my other black and white images. So this one right here, again, very contrasty. This one right here, again, contrast. 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 Obviously our starting image. Here's another one from that series. This was a little brighter. Another contrasty image. You get the idea. The more contrast an image has, chances are it will make a pretty decent black and white. So just from the perspective of portraits, that is what I have found to be the case. Okay, thanks guys. We'll see you next time.